already did that.
Anyway.
You're welcome. Okay. So probably why. You're welcome. I was early, so.
Exercise, somebody smacked his by cords, really stuff in the office.
You're good.
What was it?
Well, recently I did.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, question on the list.
good. I didn't think. I don't know.
Okay, I was like, hey, I think we lived out the
2 hours, 3 hours.
it's like that. At least 30 times. That they have Jeff
Did it say?
basically sacrifice.
Like so.
Fish profit itself.
Okay.
So, and
Of course, that's one joke, but that's just something.
Yeah.
me too. No.
Yeah, I think we either will.
Do one.
Okay, so.
Oh, so three.
Sometimes I just people.
Yeah, I got two.
But we all
Somehow those
ate that.
or something like that. So one of my friends.
Last night I was breaking them up.
Solid.
Looking over the
Did you do this? No, 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 no.
and then I noticed.
And then I had to explain the whole thing.
Jason, are you working from home? Put dash remote in your name for me, please, so other people will be able to tell. Let's see, who else?
We can't even take it.
No. Until
Vera.
tomorrow?
So I came down
It's
to.
I don't know.
like
Same thing. What did it say?
no, I'm just saying I was apparently he had some original so they don't know what it was, but I guess that's like a treasure. I don't know.
Like. So, okay, so how did you?
I did them.
So Moses, 40 years, and then it's next to for the dude that came from him. He's bringing all the tribes of Israel
I don't know.
into Jerusalem. Discord Bible Israel. They took over.
We were talking about
And
that. I was thinking it was a really good.
basically
I actually
years
stopped
of
using the
judge.
because it was
There's no real sense.
like
There's a lot of ups and downs of people like, oh, it's great.
because I missed like 3 assignments and
Let's go to
like
and then the ends like. And after the like,
yeah, I know. It was really bad.
Oh, it's
But
not
it's
open until
But
11:59.
you're back in school. Finally. But the whole time, he will be pretty detrimental to you guys. I don't know. How would you protect the world? Yeah. I know more than you know, and you even know. But they're not going to change something, even if I try to. So clear that stuff up. Let's let them know this is hard again.
Yeah.
Looks around, all is solved. Anyways, solved.
Yeah. You want to know before you get yourself sick.
Yeah.
Righteous.
And so I don't want to create
I might hit the horse
before I know like
Because if I
Kidding me? You king, doing, iron trying to fix it, then of course Samuel, then David, David, the big crown after strength, after Saul, pretty much killed himself.
Yes.
And so the so
He wasn't putting himself back down on, or he wasn't trying to step off behind my foot. So Saul ends up getting taken. David gets put in place, and for quite a long time, he was really good, which is nice. The goal range of basically Israel, because of how Israel's unified and extreme.
I think I've got everybody. All right.
But I'm like, yeah, sure, that's fine. And then everyone's like, what? Call it, it's almost super and then it's almost, put it even higher up. Everyone's like, oh, it's pretty cool. I love yours. And so it's not.
Oh, no, we're doing another cookie.
Go, baby. Okay, let's see if you can do it. See Cody in here. All these people are trying to join the Zoom session so they can see both screens. Okay, we're ready. Okay. www.kahoot.it. With this game pin. It's loud. A little less loud. Oh, good job. The JW beat everybody, whoever JW. Okay. Ooh, good job. Some movement. Really good. Justin's on the streak. Oh, tricked ya. Seth can't be beaten. Ooh, good job. This is why I don't say these ones if you haven't noticed. I'll give it away if I say it.
Did you say 2 more sentences or 1 more sentence?
Oh, somebody's mic is up. Can't trick you twice. I was just holding that lead. Good job. The relational operator is actually corrector, but I'll take them both in the cahoots. Good job. Nobody ever gets that one. Jessica, I think your mic is on. Let me mute you. Oh, good. The majority of people got it. Remember, we have to have our condition. Oh, Seth just had that lead and he just held it. Woohoo! Give everybody a hand. Good job. Every question was answered correctly by most players. I've never seen that before. Good job, you guys.
So we
So-
passed the class?
You got the Kahoot. I don't know why it turns into little Pac-Man, guys. I think it's a game here, but I'm not betting it. Too cool for school here for me. All right, so why are we doing Kahoots? Because we gotta get ready because we have a unit exam this week. And let's take a look. We're halfway here in week 8. So our unit 2 exams, you guys need to take the exam by that Monday, I think Monday evening at midnight. And your hands-on project is due the same time. Let's take a quick look at it if you hadn't looked already. So in this one, you're gonna prompt the user for a number between 1 and 5. So it would be really good if you validated that the number was between 1 and 5 somehow, right? Your defensive programming. And then based on the number they input, you're going to output that number in a Roman numeral form. So that's really all your requirements are. You can kind of make it work however you like, whatever you want it to do. So this one, make it its own Colab notebook and just submit that notebook. And that is working fine. I don't know that that's how I'll want you guys to submit things forever, but for now it seems to be working great. So we'll do that. Before we take a look at the practice test though, I'd like to look at our textbook at a few of the sample problems at the end of the chapter. You guys did several of them. Oops, I always forget the CAPTCHA thing. CAPTCHAs are just evil. I hate them. Okay, so when you guys did the questions, there was one question about a slash and a question mark or something like that. And I kept counting everybody wrong, thinking, well, I wonder if the thing I looked at was wrong, because it's unusual for all this class to get everything wrong. And sure enough, it was my fault. And I got called on it, yay, if you see in the Discord. So that person got you your points back, but I haven't given them to you yet, but I will. So yay. Sometimes in computer classes, there's a couple of different things that can happen. We can end up with, I've heard, really mean teachers. So people are afraid to bring something up if there's a problem. Or we can end up with some really timid students where people are afraid to bring something up if there's a problem. So I like it when people find problems and bring them up, because that shows that we're all working together. So I'm trying to find these things, but I'm having some issues. I don't know why. You should be able to go to chapter 5 and then back up. It's just not letting me. It's like, no. I just needed to go a little further. I just wasn't believing myself. So some of these questions should look pretty familiar. The ones that I wanted to look at together. Let's look at 44 first. So if you have your book, oh, don't do that. No, no, no. Just, sorry, I was trying to zoom and I can't zoom that way. Just make you guys crazy.
Page 248.
Thank you. This crazy thing won't ever let me see it. So when we look at number 44 here, it can be a little confusing to look at it first. And sometimes we have to get used to answering the questions in programming classes as much as we do anything else. So if we look at this one, first of all, it's just got a bunch of letters and it can be really confusing to people. But we need to think of these letters as variable names and Booleans. So to start off, we have 4 variables, A, B, C, and D. And each of these variables has a specific value. A is true, B is false, C is false, and D is true. Now we have to evaluate each of these conditions to determine if that condition would result in a true or a false return value based on looking at it. So there's a few things looking at these that we can have questions about right off the bat. So for me, when I look at it, right away I think, gosh, I think there should be some parentheses. You know, this condition would make a lot more sense if it were like that, right? And then I would be able to evaluate it a little easier and it would be more like something I'm used to seeing. So let's take some liberties with our textbook and let's assume we have parentheses like that. Because otherwise it's just really, really yucky to try to figure these out. So let's start with this beginning, A or B. If I look at this condition, A is true, B is false. My condition says I'm going to be true if A or B is true. So that's going to result in a true condition, right? Because A was true. Now, what about this one that's within these parentheses? Same thing, C is false, D is true. So since it's an or, and one condition is true, our result condition would be true. Now we can combine true or true, and we would see that that whole condition comes out to a value of true. Now, questions about that? Think about it, make sense? Now, this one down here, let's do the same thing. A and B and C and D. Now, if I look at this, A is true, B is false. For this condition to be true, both halves of it must be true. So would A and B be true or false? It would be false. What about C and D? False. So then our entire condition, false and false, would be false. Now, if we go to C, let's do the same thing. Now we get a little bit of variety here. We know A and B already is false, and we know C and D already is false. So what about that or condition? Does that change that entire condition to be true, or are we still false? Still false. We don't have any trueness going on there at all. So I say, yep, that thing's still false. Now, our D, we have A or B and C or D. We decided A or B was true and C or D was true. So that entire condition is going to end up true. Now, does that make sense? As you look at it, we have to take the data that they've given us and apply it to their questions. So they can always ask us some interesting things in different ways, but we're always assuming we're going to walk through it. Okay, let's look at this next one. This one, we're going to see with all these not keywords, it's going to depend a lot on how we assume there would be parentheses. Let me scroll up a little bit and get rid of all of that. I almost get it. Now, I'm going to start out saying that we're going to have parentheses like this, so that the not is going to be the last thing we're concerned about. Now, if I don't have any more parentheses, I just have to start at the leftmost position and work my way across. Is that true? Or is there an order of precedence to those operators? Let's see if I can have this up again. There is an order of precedence. So let's take a look at that for those logical operators. I'm going to find it in our table of contents. So when we're doing math, it's the order of operations. They call it the hierarchy of operations. Same thing. Whenever we're looking at a condition in an if statement, the first thing that we have to do is all of the math, right? Because if I have addition on this side of the if statement and some multiplication over here, I've got to do all that math to come up with the answers before I can compare them to each other, right? So that's the first thing that happens when we're evaluating an if statement, is we do all of the math. Then we do have an operator precedence. So if we don't have any parentheses, we're going to evaluate things in this given order. So our less than comparisons would be evaluated before or less than or equal to. We don't ever see this really actually apply very often, because if we were software developers that had to worry about this every day because we had somebody writing crazy if statements, that person probably wouldn't have a job for very long, because they'd be like, what are you doing? Now, that being said, it looks like our logical operators actually have an order of precedence too. So if I didn't put those parentheses in, that not would have been the first thing that was evaluated. But since I put in parentheses, it'll be after. The next highest item would be the and then the ors. So let's look back at that question then. So we would actually, that means as we go across here, we would look at K and L first, wouldn't we? So K is false and L is true. So what would K and L end up being? False. Because they would have to both be true for an and condition to be true. So now we've simplified and we're saying J or false or M. So what would that part within the parentheses evaluate to be? I heard it. Well, we would have false, false, true. So it would be true because we have all ors. And then we're going to throw a not at it and make it false. So we just mess up the whole thing. This one, yesterday, I looked at it real quick, and I feel like very strongly this conditional should be something that we use as grounds for termination for programmers. So we're not going to look at it. We're saying, no, we're going to fire those guys that use that kind of if statement because it's just ridiculous. So whenever we're doing these nots, we're reversing the order. So if we have multiple nots, oh my goodness, it just gets so crazy. What would I do to actually figure out how that was going to come out? Can you think of a way? Could I use Python? I could, couldn't I? Because I could go into the Python interpreter and I could just create J equals false as a variable, K equals false as a variable, and I could just put them all in, and then I could say if, and put this awful if statement, and put something underneath it, like the if statement was true, so that I would evaluate it within Python, let Python do the work to figure out if it's true or false. And a lot of these problems, you guys are getting to a point with your Python code that might be a good way to double check yourself. You know, try to work it out on your own manually, and then say, I'm going to double check and write this in Python and see if I come up with the same answer. Another place you might want to do that is if you have calculus or a math class like that, where you have a lot of formulas that you need to kind of remember and understand. You're getting to the point where maybe you could code that formula in Python and figure out that calculus problem. And not only would you have the memory of doing it in your math class, but you would have that memory of coding it too, writing that code, and that can help people remember how to do those problems. Okay, what about C? What would be evaluated first if we were looking at that order of precedence? J and K and L and M. So J and K would be false, and L and M would be true. So with an or in between them, what would our final result be? Be true. Very good. So again, look at any of those you want and kind of try fiddling with them in Python and see if you can test yourself. Make sure you're getting a good understanding. always tell people when we are working with software or hardware, we can get an idea that something is a certain way, and it might not actually be that way. And so it's really good for us to double check and recheck and make sure that we're not getting an invalid response to our experiment. I used to teach networking, and I had a student once who was given a piece of networking equipment that was bad. And he used that equipment to form all these ideas that this is how a network works, and it doesn't work this way because you have to do these weird things. And it's like, no, you just had bad equipment. That's not the way it works, you know. And so it's very hard to erase those things from his mind because he was absolutely sure he was correct because he didn't know he had a faulty router that he was working with, you know. So it can be tough on us. All right, I'm going to bring up this practice exam, and I'll bring it up, and we'll go through it together. If you bring it up, it'll give you different questions in a different order. So we'll just work on this one together. Okay, number one, I want to do this exam so that you see how critical it is for you to do it. Given that the user input for response is 3, that's what they typed in when we did the input response command. What would be displayed if code corresponding to the following program segment were run? What do you think? They type in response and we save it, and we have this weird select case thing saying the door to Sesame Street is open. Exactly right. Now everybody take a look at that. Make sure you see why that's happening, because remember the case statement is one that we don't have in Python, so we can't try it. So that's why this one is kind of harder to remember. Whenever we're looking at the case statement, we're basically saying in case 1, we're saying if response equals 1, do those things. If response equals 2, it's just replacing that syntax for us with this case syntax instead. But that's what we end up with in the end result.
I don't remember reading in the book, maybe I passed over, but is case statements pseudocode? It is? Okay.
Yeah, and it's because it's a multiple alternative selection, they want us to know about it, and we are just kind of messed up since we're using Python, and it doesn't have that case statement. So it can be hard to remember. But exactly right, if you can just look at that pseudocode and try to figure it out, even without remembering it. Okay, this next one, they say that this program segment has been written, and the code is lines 1 through 8 here. And they say if the user inputs hooray on line 2 as their answer, what line will be executed after line 3? Now, on line 3, the if statement is saying, did they type no? Did they type no? No. So we won't do that right statement. We'll keep going, and finally we should see, are you having fun yet? Because our if statement is false, so we would skip all the code from the if to the end if, and then we would write, are you having fun yet? Now, in this question, it can be confusing to new programmers for a lot of different reasons. First of all, because it uses pseudocode syntax. Second of all, it doesn't do any indenting, right? And Python is making us indent if we have if statements. Pseudocode isn't. So if somebody's messy like this, they just won't indent. It'll still work. So, or it's still valid pseudocode. So we're looking for the end if statement to know when the if statement body is over. Number 3, a selection structure consists of a or and blank blank together with one or more blocks of statements. Do you think it wants if statement? I'm guessing here. A selection structure consists of an if statement together with one or more blocks of statements. I could be way wrong, but it fits, so I'll try it. Number 4 is a true false. Given that X is 14 and Y is 15, is the following true or false? Is X greater than Y? No. Is X greater than 0? Yes. Is Y less than 0? So we have a big mess, right? So what's going to be evaluated first? Because we have a big mess here. We saw that our and is going to be given the highest priority. So is X greater than 0? Yes. Is Y less than 0? No. So that's going to be false. So now it doesn't even, so, okay, so this part is false. What about X greater than Y?
Oh, wait, no, that's false.
That's false. So we have false or false. So we should have false. Question 5, the case statement can be used to compare numeric data. True. The greater than or equal is one of the blank operators. What? I heard it. What do you want? Comparison?
Relational.
Relational? That's the better answer. Okay, question 7. If X equals 2, Y equals 4, and Z equals 6, which of the following will give a result of false? What do you think?
Option 3.
Is the first one false? No.
Oh, yeah, that was false.
Second one, is Y greater than X? Yes. Is Z greater than X? Yes. So that one's true. What about the third one? That one looks promising. Is X greater than Y times Z? No. Is Z greater than X times Y? No. So even though that's an or, we should be false on both sides, right? Does that one look right? Now, notice the difference between that one and the next one. In the next one, they have the multiplication happening to the number before the comparison operator. So we end up with a big number greater than Z, so it's true. So we're kind of looking through to find one that looks different. So for me, when I'm taking a test, a programming test, sometimes we can spend a really long time on one question, and that's okay. Sometimes we might want to have a piece of paper and a pencil or something beside us so we can scratch out these kinds of things to actually have something to write down, and that's okay. So you can have a piece of paper and a pencil with you. I try to do exams in our tests a lot like certification exams, because when you guys are taking certain classes, you're going to take a test to prove that you're certified or that you have knowledge in that topic. So one, like the database class of Teach That this morning, the 250 class. So at the end of the class, we'll take the Microsoft Technology Associate Certification exam
as our final. So they'll get certified as database analysts, basically. Whenever we take those certification exams, we can have no resources. We can't use a calculator. We can't do any of those kinds of things. The only thing we can do is have a piece of blank paper and a pencil to write things down real fast or to work out problems. So it's really good to get used to doing that kind of thing now, you know. And if you get the feeling like me, sometimes I'll think, I wish we had 14 boards so I could do everything out on a board. We have people at home, people here, and I keep trying to figure out what to do about that, because sometimes these things need to be written out, you know. And if you could just write it down and kind of scratch it out and work it out through your own accord, then it's gonna go better. Now, the other thing that I do when I'm taking exams like that is, because those exams are timed, sometimes we have to try to speed through answers as quickly as possible, do tricks, look for things that are going to stand out to us. So in this example, I looked at it right away, and what's the first thing that stands out to me? That there's an and clause in this one. So I check that one, because the likeliest candidate to be false is going to be something that has an and clause, right? So I check that one real fast, and it's like, that one's true. That's not the right answer. I'm surprised, because I would expect it to be that one, since it's the only one that has an and. So then I look at them a little bit more, and I'm like, what else is different? Oh, this one is doing some math along with just straight comparison. So if I'm going to find something that's going to come up with a false answer, it's probably that one that looks unusual. So just like you would do in an English class, where you're looking for something that stands out as unusual in the answers, that's the same thing that we want to do. All right, what about number 8? Blank variables are logical variables that can be true or false. And I'm going to put an uppercase B, because it is starting a sentence there. Question 9, a program that uses menus instead of requiring the user to memorize commands is often known as a menu-driven program. Seems true. Okay, here's one of our overtime ones. They have a lot of overtime pay calculations in the chapter, so take a look at those. They also have an example Raptor flowchart that does an overtime pay calculation. For this one, we have Marcy, who worked 42 hours. She earns $10 an hour. So how much did Marcy earn last week before taxes? So first, let's look at that if statement. When we look at that if statement, are we going to be doing this calculation or this calculation? Rate greater than or equal to 10 and hours less than or equal to 40. So is that going to come out as true? No, because her hours are 42. So we're going to be doing this else calculation. So it's a bigger calculation. So here's where I would need pencil and piece of paper, right? To kind of write some things down. But first of all, I'm going to do 40 times her rate of pay. Notice her rate of pay is real easy multiplication. We didn't make it $11.42 an hour for you. So $10 times 40, that's 400. Plus the extra hours minus 40, so that was 2, times her pay rate, which was 10, so they have to be $20, times 1.5, so that would be 30. So 430, does that come out right? If I could do math on the board, you can do it with a piece of paper and a pencil. But it does make you wish you had a calculator sometimes. Okay, this next one, we have a program segment. And all they want to know is, what is the test condition?
Which one? Third one? And that's really the only answer that's a good condition, isn't it? Number 12, including statements in a program to check for improper data during execution of the program is known as? If I can spell it properly. Two strings are blank if they contain exactly the same characters in the same order. I'll go with that. A single alternative selection structure always contains an else clause. Right, because a single alternative, only the if. If X is true and Y is false, which of the following will give a result of true? Which one? The last one. In an if then else selection structure, at least one line of code will always be skipped. Is that true? Right, because we're either going to do our if body or our else body, but never both. Okay, number 17 is Joan less than or equal to Jane? No, alphabetically, Jane would come first, right? Question 18, which of the following is not a type of selection structure? And notice that Canvas rearranged the answers. So don't let this all of the above thing confuse you. It should say all of the others. And what are you supposed to do whenever you see one of those answers that's like all of the others? You can't always do it. You should always check, but you should check that first. The type of operators that are evaluated second in the hierarchy of order of operations are logical operators. False. Okay, now this one, we have my name is Bunny and your name is Buddy. Which of the following is not true?
I forget the ASCII code. I see the last time, a couple questions before, you kind of, the Jane and the Jen. So is the ASCII code going to be higher if it's earlier in the alphabet? Or
It's just alphabetical order.
So it goes higher as it goes alphabetical?
Yeah. So as long as it's letters, you don't have to worry about it because it's just alphabetical order. It's when we get those special characters, we have to go off searching to find that ASCII code.
Okay.
But yeah, this one is just going to end up in order alphabetically. So which one would come first? The D's, yeah. So Buddy is less than Bunny. We know that's the truth of the situation. So which of those conditions is not true? B, if my name greater than or equal. Oh, that one is true. Is it this first one? Yeah. The first one is the only one, if you look at all these conditions, the first one is the only one where they're asking for it to be less than, because we know it's greater than, so that one would be the incorrect one. You have to follow these logical paths right down the bunny hole, right? Because it's hard enough, and then we throw in a which one isn't, but you'll think that
think logically. The multiple alternative selection structure that does not use an if then else clause is the blank or blank statement. That is that case. So I'm going to say select case, and we're going to see how it counts me wrong because I think it wants commas or something in between those words. All right, 22. X is false and Y is false. Is the statement not X or not Y true or false? True. Right, because each of those nots is going to turn that false into a true. So we're going to end up with true or true. In the hierarchy of the order of operations, relational, logical, arithmetic, blank operations are performed last. We saw looking at that chart that our logical, our ands and our ors were performed last. This evil practice test that it generated for us has a lot of fill in the blank questions. The program segment that catches a possible divide by 0 is what that should say, is known as a or an blank blank. Very good. They just said that in the comment of our code. A test condition in a conditional statement checks to see if a statement is true or false. True. Let's see how we did. Now this one, I said, oh, I'm going to put if statement because it sounds like it will fit. They were looking for the test condition. So that makes sense. A selection structure consists of a test condition together with one or more blocks of statements. Now notice that these fill in the blanks, like the only way to be close to what they want is to do the practice test. So, I mean, you're not going to remember what the book said because some of these fill in the blanks are just that picky that it's just almost word for word. So do the practice test and try and get as close as you can, and then I'll evaluate and give you credit if it's something that was super close. But we want to try to be aware of what the test wants by using the practice test. Now, good, 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 good. So I call it a select case statement, but I should call it a switch case statement. And they do want commas between the two. So this is one of those examples where you would send me an email and say, could you take a look at this? And I would probably give you like half the credit. Since I showed it to you wrong in the test, I might give you, in the example, I might give you all the credit. But when we're looking for two words like that, they usually put a comma between the words.
If you would have put switch, comma, case, would it have still been wrong?
It would have counted it wrong, and I would have given it to you. But yes, it's very, very picky. But all of these others we're getting pretty good results on for us not having done it before, so not too bad. So that the practice test should be very similar to the exam for you guys. We're using the exact same question bank. If you notice, it's only chapter 4. So the question bank is limited. If you do the practice test a couple of times, chances are you will see every single question that's in the question bank. And that's the way I want it because some of our questions are super, super picky. So I want you to have a limited number that you can see and you can look at doing the practice test. So we have a little bit of time, about an hour. With your study group, remember, you can create notes or update your notes for the unit exam so that you can have your collaborative notes to use. In your notes, remember, we don't want any actual test questions. So that can be kind of a hard one when I'm giving you the practice test, I think. Don't snag those and put them in your notes, because that wouldn't be notes. But we do have time to get some notes down and be thinking about if statements and all of that kind of stuff. When you look at the exam, remember, the exam is a very small percentage of your grade, because doing the projects, the actual hands-on stuff, is where the majority of your grade is coming from. So don't get yourself all stressed out about the exam. Sometimes people just get so stressed. So take it seriously, do the practice test, but remember, one exam is not going to kill your grade when you've been working so hard. Questions before we have lab time? I didn't set up collaborative notes for your study group. It's easier if one of you guys does it and shares it with the others, because I just have so many issues with it not doing permissions properly when I do it. So if one person in your group can set up a collaborative document there on Canvas and share it with the others. You have until Sunday night to take your test. Only use your collaborative notes as a resource, please. Other than that, you can take the practice test as many times as you want. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to end this thing. How's our home, people?
Good.
Okay, good.
I may have some questions for you later about some stuff I'm catching up on though, but I'll ask on Discord.
Okay, great. That's fine. I should be home later and I should be around to help.
Okay, sounds good.
Great.